Hello, good afternoon. It's great to be here. And yes, I'm going to be talking, it's kind of about some of the things we've been hearing today, but I'm going to kind of broaden out, hopefully, a little bit. Draw on some of the things we've been hearing about, but in the context of a particular project that's come to fascinate me, although it's not my kind of thing, or hasn't been my kind of thing. And it's about autonomous cars, kind of. The title, as you've heard, though, is, as you see, The Future of Personal Mobility, the Internet of Things and the Rise of the Autonomous Car, or why everybody needs to adopt a design mentality, that's going to be one of my messages, or how to succeed in the experience economy. Now, that's your kind of language. It isn't really my kind of language, although it's going that way, it's becoming that way, because I'm an archaeologist. Yeah, but a design archaeologist, you could say. I'm at Stanford University. I'm in the classics department, which means, yep, ultimately I specialized way back when in Latin, Greek, ancient history, and the archaeology of the Greco-Roman city-state. However, I got pulled into this world of design. And I'm attached now, and I'm so proud to be attached, to the D School at Stanford, which is formerly the Hasso-Plattner Institute of Design. And I help run a particular project within our design division in the engineering school called the Center for Automotive Research at Stanford. We love acronyms, CARS, Center for Automotive Research at Stanford. And we have the Revs program, which actually isn't an acronym, but so it goes. But why archaeology? This is going to be the orientation, of course, for my talk. It's what I do. Archaeology. First, because, and this is a message about design, which is there's no clean slate in design. You can't just wipe things clean, start again, and come up with a better solution. There is no clean slate in design. You can't start from scratch. Archaeology, as well, is not history. I'm not going to be talking about the past. I'm going to be talking really about stuff, things, and how they orient us, how they are part, actually, of what it is to be human. I'm going to be talking about human-centered design in a big kind of broad brush way, but focused on cars. So archaeology, the material life of the past, it's still with us, it's still around, it's in the present, but it's part of our projects, forward-looking, hopefully, to have a sustainable future. And the other thing that always I find certainly makes me feel a little bit better about talking to audiences who are very expert in things that I may know little about, but I can draw on a certain amount of expertise, which is that I've tuned into 200,000 years of human experience, which is probably a little bit more than most of us. So I like to think that at least I've got a kind of view of a big picture, and it's certainly outside the box of many of the things we do in the business world. And, oh yes, I do still do what archaeologists do, and currently I'm excavating a Roman town in the north of England. Okay, let's focus in. Revs at Stanford. What is it? It's a program, a new program, we're 3-4 years old now, that's intended, no, its target, its mission, is to connect the past, the present, and the future of the automobile. And our basic point, and you're going to see it running through this afternoon in many different ways, is that there's so much more than we might typically and have conventionally associated with the car than what appears at first hand, at first sight. There's so much more to the past, present, and future of the car than a story of powered boxes on wheels, as I put it here. And yes, it means that, for example, we research what these cars that are ubiquitous. They are almost the defining item of material culture of the 20th century. The 20th century would be utterly inconceivable without the automobile. So we look at the genealogy of cars, the sequence of cars and how one developing from another, connected to another, engineering, developing this way, that way, picking up this innovation, dropping that one. We look at the trajectory. I like the word genealogy. The family trees of cars. Here we've got, it's an advertising, promotional image of a Bentley from the 1930s, and you can see what the image is trying to say. But in terms, for example, of Bentley's branding, they're very interested in this kind of thing. But it's more than just a company and its branding. It's just quite what is the notion of this particular kind of car, a Bentley. And there is something in there regarding its identity. Other things that we do, we do have actual cars in a collection. This is a 1913 Peugeot voiturette. There were only 4 of them made, and they were very successful in European racing in the run-up to the First World War. They then got lost. They were rediscovered. They became they were legendary because of the engineering advances that the guys who built these had achieved. In the 1970s, Honda went as far as seriously, in detail, looking at these cars, which had come to light again after 40, 50 years of being lost in the world of the car enthusiast and collector. Honda looked at them again in the 1970s, and from them developed one of the mainstays of modern engines, the Honda VTEC, which was ultimately rooted in one of these things, which had 1913 twin overhead camshaft with the oil and cooling system that we're so used to today. Prior to the First World War, all of these engineering advances made and not adopted. An interesting story of innovation, but not adoption. And for the future, cars, the Center for Automotive Research, has done a bunch of different things, including solar-powered cars, and perhaps in some ways, I wouldn't say significantly, but interestingly, the team at Stanford won second place, but not first place, in the DARPA Urban Challenge, which was about autonomous vehicles. The prize was awarded to the first cars that could drive an urban course of, I think it was 80 kilometers or something like that. And Junior was the car, a Volkswagen Passat, which became the basis for Google's driverless cars. Okay, so that's the background. I'm now going to sketch a story for you of a car. Well, that's going to be the issue. Is it a car? In the near future. And it's kind of a story of a day in the life. And it goes like this. It's about me. So I'm getting up. It's early morning. It's in the near future. And I'm lucky enough. Not least because I'm in Silicon Valley and we're tuned into new technologies there. So we like to think. So I'm up and I'm still using an iPad, but it's kind of one of the more recent models. But now it's got all sorts of wonderful apps on it that help me control the house. I've got a very smart central heating, air conditioning system, which has learned from when we get up and adapts itself to the weather, the humidity, because it's got sensors out in the garden, and it gets it just right for us up in the morning. It's tied in also to the music coming on, and the espresso machine. I'm a bit of a coffee snob. The espresso machine has made sure that it's just at the right moment when I get my ristretto ready there for when I'm up to check email on the machine downstairs. The music has followed me down the stairs because I've got another one of those intelligent systems that knows where I am in the house and manages to keep the kids still up, asleep, without too much sound up there. It turns the music up downstairs for me, doesn't disturb them, but I get a little bit of a boost in the morning to get me going. I'm going to be going to work this morning. I'm not working so much from home because I'm lucky enough to have Google Fiber into the house, which gives me 2 gigabits of bandwidth to do all sorts of wonderful things, including working with my cloud services at home, at work. But no, today I'm going to go in. And so I make my way down to the garage where the commuter car is waiting for me. Now, this is really one of my pride and joys. It's a Gordon Murray special. Gordon Murray has developed this commuter car only in the last few years. It looks a bit like a smart car, but that's where the similarity ends. It's a remarkable new construction, which is neither a chassis frame plus bodywork, nor is it the monocoque systems that we're used to with lots of body panels. No, it's carbon fiber, thin steel tubing glued together such that even given its small size, it's got more safety capability than a Mercedes 500 series, the old one. The key thing, it's utterly customizable. I can have whatever kind of body panels I want on it, whatever colors, whatever kind of materials, because that doesn't affect the strength and the performance of the vehicle. I can choose powertrain. In this case, I've got one of the high energy, high efficiency electric systems, electric only. It's being plugged in overnight into the grid, but it only takes 2 hours to come to full charge, and it gives me 300 miles range, which gets us past all the issues of range anxiety. Oh my goodness, my car isn't going to get me there and back in time with enough energy. And I've got it customized to give me a little bit of energy and excitement in the morning, because I can have the car perform in different modes. I get in the car, it knows I'm coming because I've got, well, we don't use keys anymore. It knows I'm there from my presence. It has sensors, and it picks up facial recognition, opens the door for me, in I get, and of course it's an intelligent, autonomous vehicle. And it says to me, "Good morning, Michael. Have you remembered to check that email you mentioned to me last night?" "Yep, I did it this morning." "That's good, Michael. In you get." And I say, "Hey, I want a bit of a change this morning. I don't want you just to take me to work. I'm going to have a little bit of driving myself. So can you put me in 1933 Bentley mode?" And the car says, "Absolutely, Michael. We can do that. I'll reprogram the motors which are in the wheels. Okay? I'll reprogram the motors, and we'll get the dynamic system working for you just right. And here, Michael, there is your wooden stick shift. You enjoy yourself." Switch it on, and the car roars to life because it's got a remarkable interior sound system, which creates a 3-dimensional soundscape for me, including the wonderful sound of a 4.25 1935 Bentley 6-cylinder engine with the throaty roar of the exhaust, the muffler. And I can switch it into first gear. The electric motor is more than capable of giving me just the kind of acceleration, the dynamics of the suspension system, and the grip that the car can alter with the road. Means it slips a little bit as I pull away. It's just what I want, and I'm getting the sounds of the 1930s. It's wonderful, but the traffic is dreadful. And so, I really can't be bothered with this. I can't, play around with it the way I want. I'm going to have to hand it over to you. I haven't got a name for the car. I didn't go that far. So I just say, "Car, can you take over, please? I can't be bothered. I'm going to do some work instead." "Of course, Michael. You do whatever you think is right." And so the car takes over. I'm in fully assisted mode, which means I can do what I want. The law, California state law, says you must not fall asleep at the wheel. It is your responsibility to monitor your intelligent car. Do not fall asleep at the wheel. But I can do pretty much anything I want because these systems are remarkable. Sensors, plus the car is tuned into a whole series of sensors, information systems, data transfer systems, car to road, car to cloud, which are telling the car everything it needs to know, plus it can see ahead using its camera sensors and all sorts of other things too. I'm pretty safe. I'm getting on with some work. The car now and then just says, "Are you okay, Michael? I've noticed your blood pressure's up a little bit this morning," because the car is part of a comprehensive system in my home and my life, which is looking after me. It's monitoring all my health signs. All of my visits and tests to the health clinic are logged together in a complete health profile just for me, held in the cloud by my healthcare providers. They know, because I'm being monitored regularly, blood pressure, blood sugar, all the rest. And they tell me now and then, "Look, as the car does this morning, you're a little bit high on the blood pressure, Michael. Are you sure you're okay? Do you not think you should schedule that appointment with Dr. Hansen this week? You didn't go the other month, you know. You should get those tests." So the car's just keeping things in order for me there. But I'm ignoring it because I've got involved, not in work. No, I've got the latest multimedia novel on my little pad here, and I'm busy reading it. The car, though, gives me a little hint. It says, Michael, we've got a bit of trouble perhaps coming up. There's going to be some congestion with the traffic monitoring system has told me that a few miles ahead there's really quite a backup, and there's even been an accident on the road, and some crowds of people have gathered around because they're trying to help. It's been a bus accident, and it was a school bus going to school in the morning, and there's a lot of concern about the event. However, Michael, we're in control. All the systems are working fine. But I just want to give you a heads up because I may need to ask you to help me out. I may need to give control over to you, Michael, if the problem gets worse. We're driving along, and then the vehicle says to me, Michael, I'm really a little concerned here. I'm getting some anomalous signals coming out of the road information network. It doesn't make sense to me. Can you please pay attention? I'm still in the book, and I say, okay. So I look up. One of the key things about the autonomous vehicle is you need to be ready to take over, of course. It's far better driver than me, but there may be circumstances where it doesn't work. So the car, I'd wake up from my book, look around, get my bearings, and then things start happening very fast. The car says, dreadfully sorry, Michael, all the distance measurements that we've been given were wrong. It's not 3 miles off. We're heading now into the accident zone. I need your help now, Michael. I'm going, I don't know where we are. This road doesn't look familiar to me. You take me on a different route this morning. Well, yes, Michael, I thought you could get around the traffic going this way, but I didn't want to go this way. I don't know where we are. Michael, we've got something coming up. There are 14 children in the middle of the road. Can you do something for me? I don't know what to do. Then the system goes into automatic. It has sensors for seeing what's ahead in the road, and it goes into, of course, automatic braking mode. However, in this case, it has a dilemma. The car is either going to plow into, the braking distance will not allow it to stop, it's wet weather in the morning, it's either going to plow into 14 children in the middle of the road, or it can veer and hopefully miss the cars parked along the freeway, but risk running me and the car into a flyover. It makes a choice. 14 children or its driver. You can guess which one it's going to make. So, that scenario is not that outrageous. If you were in the talk just earlier this afternoon, Google have been running cars between San Francisco and their head office in Mountain View for some time now, and I think they've logged up a couple 100,000 miles, and they look very ordinary. I like the garbage cans in the background on this. People's homes, you can have them come, if you're a Google employee, get in your car, off you go to work. It does it for you. They're incredibly safe, and they are rather good drivers. But what I've done is just take you through some of the very real connections that will be familiar to you in our lives already. How we switch from home to work through various modalities, third spaces. The car is a third space where we transition not untypically from work to somewhere else. It can be painful, it can be boring, it can be tedious, as in a lot of commuting around the world, or it might not be. You can look for ways of relieving that tedium and boredom, and having somebody drive you is one of those. Healthcare systems, health monitoring is already there. You can get reductions on your premium with insurance companies by letting them tune into your driving style. You can plug into the car will monitor your acceleration, speed, handling, and all sorts, and if you're a good driver, reduce your premium. Interoperability, the switch from reading your email at home to having it go on your mobile device, to having the car pick that up as you get into the vehicle and then take it into the office. All these switches, from including Bluetooth to Wi-Fi, whatever, these are all very, very much in development and real at the moment. The notion of customized performance, of switching into different modes of driving, not a problem at all. And all the rest here too. Fuels, many different options being developed, fuel cells, electric cars, hybrid cars, and such. Awareness, situational awareness is one of the keys to the development at the moment of the autonomous vehicle, of waking up, of, right, Michael, you need to be aware now. I need you to take over. How long does it take you to become aware of being in the car where you are and be able to drive appropriately? What really more generally I'm kind of talking about here, because of all of these mixtures, the way these things merge into each other, you're not just driving in a car. Arguably, you've never just driven in a car. There are all these experiences, events, technologies that merge, converge, connect together. Around, indeed, generally we can say these are all matters of interpersonal mobility. But I'm going to define that term, qualify that term significantly in the next few minutes. Here is just an illustration that Mercedes put out, precisely around what a car interface could look like when you've got this issue. What will driving look like when you have the choice to hand over to an autonomous driving car? And it's precisely about how you relate to a machine, how it conveys to you, how it communicates to you in different ways in the way that I described in my scenario. And what happens when you don't have a driver, but it is your personalized vehicular system? It's more like a train, is it? The Aramis system in France, which failed a good number of years ago now, was precisely about such a mobility system. But then, well, what can you do in those environments, and how might they look? Here's another imaginary scenario. The relationship of size, of course, and the bodywork of a car is fundamental. Gordon Murray's car, which is a reality, it puts all of the strength of the car into the framework, an older system, in fact, from the 1930s, although very, very much up to date in terms of materials and engineering. But here we've got a concept of a personal wearable mobility system with interesting options in terms of the powertrain and how you relate to it. But it's, I think, a lovely play. I'm going to play on it a bit more soon as well. Play on the notion of bodywork. And here's Gordon with one of his prototypes, which, yeah, looks a bit like a smart card there. As I say, the difference, and the similarity ends. He looks a bit happier on this one. That's why I put him on there. But he's on a vehicle that we run in our lab, which lets you configure it in all sorts of different ways so that you can try out different options. It's about prototyping, trying out different options. Again, more of that to come. The technology for constructing Gordon's car is iStream. That's what he calls it. And to cut a long story short, it's a radically disruptive design system because it cuts across the way cars are built today. It doesn't need multi-million-dollar investment in a production line. It's much cheaper and therefore it challenges a lot of the funding financial models, business models that car companies have. And it's also centered upon the needs of commuters. Of course, everybody wants to think that they're attending to the needs of consumers, clients, and such. Here, very, very much, and particularly in terms of extreme customization, that it's, we heard the word several times today, it's a platform, Gordon's car, on which you can hang all sorts of different things, not necessarily produced by Gordon's design company. And we heard it again today, automobiles are indeed the first true open source platform, especially through the way people have found of making them their own. Gordon's particular example here is how you can reconfigure the interior of the car to suit different purposes, even though it's so small. You might not think it's got that much room in it. It's got 750 liters of space, which could take 6 shopping trolleys if you configure it appropriately, and you can do that using Gordon's designs. Other factors, though, that we're seeing in cars are much less tangible, much less to do about engineering. Here's an interesting case of an old American brand, the Buick, and it's ironic isn't the word, its success in the Chinese market. It's been a phenomenal success, unexpected. In fact, many of the big car companies moving into Asian markets have been surprised at how easy it's been. And the reason actually is very straightforward. That is that American brands like Buick have meaning. They've got significance. They mean something to people in China and India, unlike the Chinese cars that are made by state companies. So new markets, yeah, but old ideas. In this case, what is the significance? What does it mean to own a Buick? And for the Chinese, it's really quite something. You want one. Bodyworks, again, a play on this term. Healthcare systems, monitoring. We've got the development at the moment of all sorts of wearable monitoring systems which can communicate with each other to provide information that can help you manage your life more effectively in terms of your health. Wearable consumer technologies that don't just monitor your health, of course, but offer all sorts of possibilities, and again, through their connectivity. The Internet of Things is with us. It's already here, and we know, simply because of the developments that are in process, it's going to be a big issue down the line. Here is a rather impressive diagram indicating all the different sectors of our life that are going to already are actually being connected, all the way from buildings, their security, access, fire and safety, through to transportation systems, all communicating with each other through centralized information gathering systems, monitoring systems, control systems, command and control systems, but also all the sensors that are monitoring your life around you. One very interesting area, just to flick through, just to ground this scenario I've given you again in reality, near-field communication. Short distance communication between devices, and it can move from 4 inches to Bluetooth to Wi-Fi to a much bigger, broader internet connections beyond Wi-Fi, where you get little tags that you can code, you can program, you put your phone next to them, it reads them, and it connects and exchanges information. You can have them in the car, you can customize your car using these, you can put them wherever you want. They're cheap, you can already buy them online, a couple of dollars each, programmable, stick them on, and it helps you communicate between different areas of your life everywhere. Ubiquitous computing, now familiar notion. To the point where Cisco are calling it not an internet of things, connecting things, invisible computing, but an internet of everything. Boy, yes. And the literature abounds here. Sensors, of course, are at the heart of this. Wearable computing, here's just an article I pulled out, not at random, it's a rather good one, just from last year. But I like this in the title. It sends off alarm bells in my head. The quantified self 2.0. I can't remember what 1.0 is. I don't really want to know. It ties in to something else that we all are very familiar with today. When the car is part of your world, which is censoring and monitoring your life, your experiences, and intervening with suggestions, with management, with administration, it's of course part precisely of a broader world of monitoring and surveillance. And we are certainly in this world now. Well, we've just found that it is frictionless surveillance when everything you're saying potentially is being monitored and logged and data mined. One of the big things that they're talking about at length now, where I'm from in Silicon Valley, anticipatory algorithms. You gather enough information about people, and you can figure out what they're going to do next, simply from some not particularly sophisticated statistical analysis. I don't know if you've come across IC. They are mannequins with cameras in their eyes that watch what you look at. And they can do facial analysis. They can focus on your retina. They can watch what you're doing. Why? So that they know where to put stuff in a store. But also, maybe you've looked a little bit longer than most people at that item in the middle of the shelf. It could be anything. Home Depot are using a similar system to this in the United States already. And they figure, hey, that's 3.4% more longer than average. They must be interested in that. So they push a coupon to you on your mobile phone just to nudge you and say, hey, we think you might like this. Why don't you buy it? All of that, then, prompts a question. Just what is a car? If it's connected in all these different ways, and indeed, I would make an argument, it's always been so connected. Italian futurism, after the First World War, this is a car. It's about connections. Yeah, we've heard a lot about that, but let's delve more deeply into that. Mobility, yeah. But mobility, not just moving, mobility as reach. I can reach across the globe using a device in my hand. That is a kind of mobility. It's not me physically moving, but it's a kind of mobility. Co-presence is a massive impulse we all feel, to be with. It's partly the sharing thing we're so familiar with, but it's being with someone and the pressure, the impulse, the desire to be in someone's presence and to achieve that kind of presence effect, even if they're not there. That's a major motivating issue if we're interested in rich experiences. Bodywork I've mentioned. The sublime, an old emotion defined by Longinus in Rome a long, long time ago, where you go to the edge. It's the edge of extreme performance driving, or many other different experiences we seek. Here we've got sharing, anticipation. You're going somewhere, you're anticipating getting there. Tacit motor skills, you know how to drive, you don't have to think about it. Platform we've heard. Communication, yes, communication with the car, interface, but also with others on the road. Risk, we've heard about that. Status symbols, the Buick in China. Identity props, well, you just need that Ferrari, don't you, because you're inadequate. Technology, of course, all the developments we're seeing being made, and broadly a notion of performance. What I'm questioning is the very notion, actually, of an artifact, or, as we call in this environment, a product. And we've already had appropriately challenged the notion of the product, because, and here I'm trying to take us a little bit further, if we're not talking about discrete artifacts, just what is the car? It is this set of, relationships, of connections. I've said an assemblage, a distributed assemblage of entangled other things, experiences, emotions, aspirations, technologies, real artifacts, connecting systems, but there's no definable, there's no definable specification, blueprint for all of this. There's no plan, it's much more organic. In medias res, we're thrown in the middle of things, there's no turning back, there's no wiping the slate clean and saying, let's start again. We're always already immersed in these connections. And in terms, therefore, of an interest in experience, And I'm not talking about behavior. We get a lot of talk about behavior being at the heart of understanding user experiences. It's part of it, but there's much, much more. It's not just what you do. It's, in this case, I suggest meta experiences. They're the next level up from a particular experience of that morning in the car for me. I mentioned mobility, yes, reach, presence, again, sharing, the real and the imaginary, and how we love to mix them. Delegation. Car, would you please do this for me? It's a relationship of delegating, but we do that all the time to things. Phone, can you just automatically keep redialing for me, etc., etc. Entanglement, mixing things up. Nomadic itineraries, here to here to here, this to that to the other. We join things up in those little journeys through life. And mediation, connecting, but that crucial term today, disintermediation. Taking away the connections between things, having them connect, person to person, machine to machine, business to business. The car, therefore, is actually, and already was, a media device. It is a personal mobility device, not the same as the iPhone, but not that different from a smartphone. This then is the experience economy. We all have to get to this point, so what? And this is where I say, there is a way of navigating through this in a way that lets you maintain a hold on those the details, the texture of those human experiences I've tried to briefly convey. And it's a mode of design. And we like to call it, back in my team at Stanford, design thinking. But it's not really thinking. So I'm going to suggest there are real ways of becoming a designer. In fact, you're already one. You may not know it. You're already a designer. Get mindful of that, and it helps navigate these worlds of entanglement, of assemblage, interconnectivity, the ubiquitous world of the, I don't want to think of the Internet of Things, the Internet of, anyway, design thinking. What is it? When you say design, we all have a notion of what it is. We're all aware of design in different ways. It can mean styling. You hand over the product, car, to the design team, the designer. In the old days, the designer would give it its lines, give it its shape, its character, its faciality. All cars have faces. This matters because it gives identity to what would otherwise be a powertrain on wheels. Branding closely connected with that. What makes that Bentley and the history of Bentley significantly different to the history of the Cadillac? And they are significantly different. A lot of it has been to do with designers who added shape and form to the engineering. Some of that can be aesthetics. Oh my goodness, a Zagato-bodied Aston Martin. Wow, one of the most beautiful cars you could ever imagine because the line is just spot on. Graphics, graphic design, making sure your website looks good, making sure the delivery of your branding in the brochures, online, on screen, wherever it might be, looks good. And that, of course, connects also to interface. But it's much more than that. Here is the bottom line. Design, it's a process. An attitude, yep. Pragmatics, by that I mean it's a bundle of methods. They're not a method to follow. It's a series of strategies, of tactics. It's flexible. You have options, and you adapt your options to a scenario at hand where you're looking to identify needs and solve problems. Design then a process. We like to talk at Stanford of human-centered design. And our industry partners, this is kind of what we would like to be associated with. What does that mean? It means precisely throwing ourselves in medias res, in the middle of situations that are those of entanglement, but mixtures of humans, of people, of non-humans. And that can mean other species, plants, animals, or bacteria, viruses. Non-humans as things, environments, events, memories, remains, the remains of the past. It is always archaeological. The remains of the past are materially all around us. These are the melange into which we are thrown. Human-centered means to take seriously the human component to this, not product development, nor is it behavior modification. That's included, but it's a lot more. Human-centered design, then, is kind of ironically, when you get into it, it asks just the question, what is it actually to be human? Because we don't necessarily have an answer, an easy answer to that. So the whole process of intervening in the world, and here's your political stand, even though you're making money and all the rest, you know, we are all good human citizens. The stand is to say, what is better, what is worse for us? What are the standards of humanity that we want to uphold in these practices of ours, which are design practices, because you're thrown into situations where you want to identify what needs to be done, what people desire, and then act, produce, deliver. So design thinking, then, it's not a skill set, it's a skill set. Not a mystery, it's not something you give to a designer, it's a skill set. And we've spent a good deal of time, experience, case studies, identifying what we feel, although what we know actually, are the components of the process. Here's just one of the diagrams we use, which is moving from empathy through to trying stuff out. In fact, you never get there. There's always more you could have done, because in a real world, you always have to draw the line and say, I've got no more time, no more money. You might have noticed that Google is never anything other than beta. They never produce a product. It's always, that'll come next. Components. It's research-based, finding out about people, but not just observing their behavior, doing market research. No, engaging ethnographically with people, getting into their worlds, understanding them through narrative and storytelling. It's about collaboration, because you can't do this on your own. We're all needing multi-skilled, multi-expert, collaborative environments that include the real experts, those who we are attempting to work with as communities, as clients, as customers. Try stuff out, prototype, test it out, work with people, fail quickly so that you don't invest too much. Clarity and mindfulness, specifying how things can be aware as tightly as you can of what's going on. Combination of desirability, that's better than needs, I think. Feasibility, can you actually make this thing? Viability, can you afford it? An elision, bringing together of product and process, company and community. We've heard a lot about this already. Here, though, it's incorporated into the very design and production process itself, as much as the determining a product, funding it, delivering it. Some more examples. We have, again, gone into methods that we can apply in a kind of suite of options. You have a healthcare situation, an emergency room. How do you make that experience better? How do you find out about it? There are ways you can do that through interviewing, observing, watching, mapping, planning, all sorts of things, intervening. These are ways of researching the process. So, what I'm offering is a way, a very practical way, a tried and tested way of negotiating these worlds of their complexity, worlds of complexity. They're not confusing, although they can be, and they are certainly disconcerting. And the scenario I gave you of the car is, of course, an extreme, and it's a classic component of the horror genre where the machine takes a decision for you because it thinks it knows better, or it has to, or it turns against humanity, even though it's the old Frankenstein myth. And we live those things. Movies, popular culture around us embody those myths. But those myths are very real, because the key issue at the moment is not technology in the autonomous vehicle. It's how on earth are we going to get people to switch from their autonomous mode to handing over to the car and back again, which is all about psychology and myth and preconceptions, anticipations, perception of risk, which is so fuzzy it's untrue. But we can research and investigate it and produce a solution which is design actionable, not just find out, know something, then move forward with it. And this is a process for doing it. It's a fuzzy statistic I've got up here because it's based on a sample, and you can always challenge the sample. However, 1/3 of startups in Silicon Valley in the last 3 years have adopted a design outlook. They're not focused so much on a great new idea or a funding opportunity or a new niche in the market or some market research that says this is that and should be done. No, they're doing this kind of, it's been called various different things. User-centered, interaction design, experience design. It used to be called human factors. It's much broader now. It's a design outlook, indeed a design solution to these mixed up worlds that were probably never of just things. And you can do it too. It's not rocket science. It's not an algorithm either. It's not a procedure. It's what I call a pragmatics. It's learnable because we all kind of know about it. We know about it because it's been around for millennia. Actually, it's a modification of the way design has been traditionally taught. No, the arts have been taught in the art schools of Europe for several hundred years. Studio-based, project-based learning in studio environments. So it is learnable, it is applicable. And the invitation to us all is to go there because it's tried and tested. You can do it, and yeah, it might help us make life a little bit richer and not have Gordon Murray's gorgeous commuter car murder me. Thank you.
Well, I don't know about you, but I didn't expect the Internet of Things to be described so passionately as Michael did there. Thank you very much. Does anybody want to ask any questions now? I think we're all still taking in that extraordinary story of the near future. I wonder how near that future is. Okay, there is a question at the back there. Yes. Is it possible for you to summarize what you've just said in 2 sentences? What a challenge.
The world is wonderfully rich and complex and human. We can understand that using a tried and tested way of being in the world, which is called design. It's about a certain way of approaching problem solving. You can learn it. You already do it. If you're mindful of that, go for it.
That was 1 sentence.
Hello.
Well done, Michael. One more question here, yeah.
Yes. Thank you for your presentation. Really loved it. I have a question. You are talking about design and perhaps designing your own things and taking in control. How do you compare that to the other trend where you see people sharing more and more and using stuff more effective?
Absolutely. It's completely part of the scenarios that are facing us. In its sense, if you take the car again, it's my case study for thinking through these issues. Cars, until relatively recently, were absolutely shared because people couldn't, certainly not out of America anyway, afford a car on their own. They were family and items and shared in a way where we don't see now. And of course, given certain commuter experiences, people are moving that way as well. Keeping a car in a big city can be a pain, it's expensive, and you can find ways, particularly when you have effective, efficient public transport systems, you can find ways of car sharing. We have a big car sharing scheme across the United States, and it's very popular in California, called Zipcar. I don't think you have the equivalent over here, and it looks fabulous. The only trouble is the take-up has been really limited. So the notion of sharing is spot on because we love sharing in the vehicle, talking, going places together, going places to meet, the co-presence thing I was talking about. It's there. The issue is it's become a little bit awkward, problematic, a pain to us. We want to overcome that. There are different ways of doing it. It's part of what will be explored undoubtedly.
Okay, You compared the car to the smartphone in your presentation.
Yeah.
I don't see people sharing their smartphone.
Absolutely. And one of the things certainly that big car companies are finding is that it's a hard sell to get people to move from the notion that the car is part of your personal mobility solution, right? Sharing it doesn't work as well. Even though it can get you from point A to B, cars have always been so much more than that. Not for everyone. We're certainly seeing a diversity now of attitudes towards mobility. It actually may have been there historically in the 20th century. It's just our stories of mobility in the 20th century have been particularly one track about the autonomy, independence that the automobile afforded people. And certainly in the United States, it built the United States. So there are options, different things, but again, I would connect them in terms of these meta experiences. Mobility is not just physical movement, it's an attitude, it's an aspiration. We heard it actually in the previous talk, it's an issue of efficacy. It's actually, I think, behind the anxiety over electric cars. Electric cars have typically all the range you need, but companies are finding they can't get over that with their customers. And it's not that they don't actually have the range. It's you feel that you can't just jump in the car and drive 250 miles to a destination, even though you'd probably never do it in a month of Sundays, but you can't just do it by getting up in the morning and going for it. You have to prepare it, and that removes a sense of agency from you, of being able to act on the spontaneous spur of the moment. So these attitudes are aspects of human experience that are not easily investigated using, for example, behavioral psychology or indeed cognitive psychology. They're much more cultural. They're much richer than that. And that's what we need to tackle. We can do so with tried and tested methods and strategies.
Brilliant. Well, that was a fascinating talk. I'd like to ask you once again to thank Michael Shanks for talking to us about the mobility. And I hope you will join us for drinks next door. Thank you very much for your attention today.